Cool. Awesome. So y'all just did a little bit of discussion on this little bit of code here. And I'd love to hear from a few groups, like what did you talk about? What do you think will happen? Why do you think it will happen? What actually happens? Let me hear from some brave volunteers. And if I can hear from, let's hear from, oh my gosh, so many volunteers. I love it. Let's hear from Caleb. Double mute.
I'm so sorry. Like I went down
okay.
and like everything, my world is spinning. So you called my bluff. So what we said it was going to do is we're like, okay, so you're defining double as a method. You've got numbers, the variable set to an array containing all of these numbers. Then you've created another variable set to an empty array. So then you're calling this each command on the numbers array. And it's going to go through and iterate through each number. And it's going to multiply each number by 2 and then shovel it into the doubles array. And then it's saying print double. However, we ran into undefined method and I said, can you define methods outside of a class? And that is where we ended.
Interesting. Undefined method. Here's a fun thing. I have actually not run this, so that's cool. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's see, Sid. Where did Sid go? Sid said, no, I don't want to speak. Sid is muted.
Sorry. Yeah, we had the same thing happen to us. We thought it would print out the double method, and we got undefined local variable or method as well.
Oh no, what did I do wrong? That is surprising. Let me run this. What is this called? Huh. Interesting. Let's see. Let's hear from. Can I actually like get just like physical hand raise? Who got that like undefined method?
Oh, I have an explanation actually.
Oh, good. What is the explanation?
It was something to do with the spacing. I don't know, when you copied it over from Slack over into just a plain text editor or just into your text editor, it doesn't, there's something wrong with the spacing or something wonky about it. I had to like kind of connect it in a weird way. So it was just something with spacing.
Shoot. Well, darn it. I wonder what happened. Was it, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Does someone want to share their screen maybe? Anyone? I've got a lot of, Jack or Lawrence, does one of you want to share your screen? Jack's all over it.
Here we go.
Undefined.
So we got it right here. I'll make this bigger.
So weird.
But we took out all the spaces in the code and then it worked.
Weird. Weird. Shoot. Where were the spaces? You know what? This is a rabbit hole. I'm not gonna let myself get sucked in.
Well, it looks like Jack has an extra doubles there that in between the two ends at the end that yours didn't have.
Oh, I put that there. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But
did that change anything or no?
Before that was there, the spaces were here and it did not like it.
Weird. Okay. I don't know what's going on with that weird spacing thing. That is not the problem that I thought that you all were going to be working on. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's do this.
Megan, I figured out what it is.
What is it?
It's the fact that it's like commented, there's like that commented out code at the very top. Once I took that away, like, or not commented out code, but your question, essentially, that's what it was pissy about.
Oh, was the question not commented?
It was commented out, but it was like pissy about it.
Weird.
Anyway.
Okay, great. This is just starting off on a great foot. Okay, let's just do some discussion, just all of us together. Joe, did you have something else to add to that?
No, I just had my answer for what it would return if it was to run.
Oh, okay, great. What would it return if it were to run?
It would return the numbers array.
Yes, the numbers array, the original array. And Joe, can you put words to why it returns the original array?
Because each always returns the original array, and you never call doubles, you call doubles, so you're calling the method double. But like Jack had in her code, the doubles between the last two ends, that will make it so the method returns that doubled array.
Great, excellent. Here's another question for the group. What is the return value of a method? If you define a method, what is the return value? And I'd love to hear from someone that I maybe haven't heard speak yet today. What is the return value of a method? Alicia, what is the return value of a method?
It's the last thing in the method.
Great, yep. The return value of a method is the last line run in that method. So the last line of this method is this end. Technically, it's this whole block is the last line of code run. And that is a block that's being given to each. So each is the last method that is called in this method. And since each always returns the original array, that means the return value of this method is the original array, that numbers array. Natia, did you have a question or something to add to that?
Yeah. So I've come to learn through my accountability that you can override that by the return command, or
Yeah.
get whatever you want. But if you throw that in there in the middle of your code, is that the end of your method, like wherever you put that, or does it stops your method? Right? Wrong?
Yeah, it stops your method. So the return value of a method by default will be the last line of code run. You can override that by using the keyword return. And when Ruby hits a return, it will stop executing that method. It's like, okay, great, none of this matters. We're done. So yeah, with this return in here, if I run this, stop right here. Cool. So a couple things happening here. We're printing out this method. So we're printing the return value of this method. And the return value of a method will always be, well, not always, will default to being the last line of code run. And the last line of code run is an each. And each returns the original array. Alicia, did you want to add to that? Or is your hand just still up? No worries. Just didn't want to ignore you. Did I start recording? Yes, I did. Phew. Okay. All right, cool. So all this is just to kind of remind us and ground us in this idea that each returns the original array. Each can do a lot of things. In our last lesson on each a couple days ago, we talked about how each can transform values into new values, like transform an array into a new array. We talked about how each can get a subset of values and how each can be used to create a new thing, like create a sum of numbers. Yeah, Joe, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I just kind of thought of this as we were working through this, but is there a reason why they created each to return the original array when it seems like most of the time you're having to do a workaround to use it rather than another enumerable?
Yeah, that's a great question. So each is a method that at its core simply iterates over an array. And you can use that iteration to do a lot of things. Because you do so many things with each, we want to keep each, or the developers want to keep each as basic as possible so that each doesn't always create a new array of the same length, or it always creates a subset, or it always creates a sum of things. Each is like the building block by which we accomplish more complex tasks. And so by design, each is as simple as possible. And the simplest iteration is to simply move from one thing to the next. And that's it. Not save that information, not do anything specific with it, just move from one thing to the next and rely on developers to do something as that iteration happens. And so what I would say is like, I would tweak that thinking a little bit of like, oh, we have to like work around each all the time, to we use each in the way that it's meant to be used to accomplish more complex tasks. Also, like a little bit of history and just like programming general info. Most, I guess, I don't know if this for sure. Most, you'll have basic iterative methods or functions in many of the languages that you'll work with. It's like a basic function of programming is to iterate over collections. And in many languages, you only have this type of like each functionality. So you only are able to like iterate, and it doesn't do much on its own. You have to figure out like what to do with that iteration. And so Ruby, like when it was first created, the first iterative method they created was each. And as the developers of Ruby have improved Ruby, they've added on iterative methods that do very specific tasks. And today, that's actually what we're talking about, is 3 of those very specific methods that do very specific iterative tasks. Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Sarah.
Thank you. I was just gonna say, I wonder why yours returned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it because of the what do we decide? Because I'm confused why doubles the shovel number times 2 isn't telling that number array to return double the value. Isn't that kind of just telling them what to do?
It is, yeah. So as we iterate, we are shoveling that number times 2 into doubles. But the last line of code run is this each, and each returns the original array. So this last line of code is just going to return the original array to us. If I want to actually have this double method return these doubles, I need to make that the last line of code, which is I need to call doubles. After I've iterated, I need to call doubles to actually have this method. Yep.
And that's why Jack had doubles there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't finish that thought. Cool. All right. So each is like the basic iterative method in Ruby. If you have experience in like JavaScript, each is sort of like a for loop. Okay, it's very basic. It simply iterates over each element in a collection, and it's up to you to decide what you do during that iteration. Now, there are a lot of very common iterative problems, I would say, or iterative situations, and they are so common that Ruby and many other languages have developed methods or functions to accomplish those specific tasks. And we're going to talk through 3 of those methods today. The first is, how do I want it? Yeah. So the first most common iterative problem is, what did I just use this word? I just used this word, is to transform. Sorry, my words today are not great. So the first iterative like problem set is transforming values. So when we transform something, we want to take take an array and create a new array with all of the elements changed in the same manner. So we talked about this with each, where we can like take an array of names and upcase them and store them to a new variable and return that new variable. Or even actually this doubles, this is a transforming problem. I want to transform each of these numbers into its double. So Ruby gives us a really nice method for doing just exactly this particular thing. And that method is map. So we can use map to transform an array, or like we can use map to take an array and create a new array that is all of those elements transformed in a particular way. So since I've got this double example up here, I'm going to recreate this method with map to show y'all how this works. So if I want to, I'm going to call this map doubles, map double maybe. Still, I'm going to need this numbers array. And what I want to do is I want to say, hey, numbers, go ahead and call this method map. Map is a method that we can call in an array. And I want to do something with each of you. So with each number, I want you to transform like this. Oh, no, map double. That's what I call this. Let me give some extra space here. Cool. So this is what this looks like. Let's see if this will play nicely for me. Oh, nope, it won't. Okay, let me rearrange my screen a little bit. Okay, cool. So I've created this method map double, and I've created it to sort of do the same thing that this double method with each is doing. But in this, I've used a new method called map. And so I'm going to run this and we'll see hopefully that it's working. Okay, I get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this is working. So let's dig into like what is happening here. The biggest difference as I first look at this is I don't have an accumulator set up here. Like there's no accumulator here. And then of course, since I don't have an accumulator, I'm not returning that accumulator. And I'm not shoveling this number times 2 into anywhere. So map is doing basically what we did up here. Map is doing all this under the hood. So map is recreating this transform pattern that we've done with each. Map recreates this and just makes it a little bit easier to write. Fewer characters that we have to type. Let me think about the next thing that I want to say. Okay, so I've talked about each as an iterative method before. Its job is to iterate over a collection. Map is also an iterative method. Its job is to iterate over a collection, but map is an enumerable. And an enumerable, let me write this down. Transform, let me put this up here. Enumerables. Map is an enumerable, and enumerables are specific iterative. I want to say this different. Sorry, I don't know why my words are not coming very nicely right now. So enumerables are iterative methods that accomplish a specific goal. Different from each, which is an iterative method that can accomplish any iteration problem. Enumerables are iterative methods that accomplish a specific goal. They are designed to do one specific thing. Regina, did you have a question?
Yeah, so does that mean that because it's a transformer, so it can't like see if something's like correct or even. It can only transform it. Is that right?
It can
Okay.
only transform.
Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yes. So, yeah, Jermaine.
Sorry. So does this mean that each can, if a map can only do one specific goal, does that mean the benefit of each is you can do multiple? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the benefit of each is its flexibility. It can help you solve any iterative problem. These enumerables that we're talking about are for one specific type of problem. So when the problem is, I need to transform all the elements of this array into something new and put them in a new array, map is the tool to do that. So what map does is map creates a new array, and in that new array, the elements will be all of the original elements transformed by the block. Ugh, that's a lot of yucky words. Molly, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering if like in an instance where you can do this, is it like generally always best practice or convention to use like map if you can use it over using each?
Yes. Yes. The convention is like, if there's an enumerable to do the thing you're trying to do, use the enumerable. However, I would say that as a beginning programmer, it's more important that you understand how iteration works than understanding, I have this problem and this is the tool that I use for it. I have this other problem and this other tool is the one that I use for it. If you get to the end of mod 1 and you can solve every problem with each and you're like not that sure about what all the enumerables are, that is a better outcome than if you get to the end of mod 1 and you could solve every problem with an enumerable, and if I asked you to do it with each, you would not know what to do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but that's like, you are beginning your programming journey. I want you to have the basics, because not every programming language has these like really nice enumerables. In general, if there's an enumerable to do a specific job, use that enumerable.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So map creates a new array, and in that new array, the elements will be all of the original elements transformed by the block. So another note here is map will always give you a new array that is the same length as the original. Okay. Let's dive into this a little bit. So map, the syntax itself looks very similar to each. We call map on a collection. It takes a block. It can also take a block variable. Generally, it always will have a block variable. And it has a block of code. As we map over elements in an array, map starts to create a new array. And so I'm going to put this in a commented out section. As we iterate, map is creating a new array. And what it's doing is it's saying, okay, for each of these numbers, I'm going to execute this block of code and send whatever the return value of this block of code is into the new array. So starting with 1, I'm going to run this block of code. Whatever this returns, I'm going to send to the new array. So 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 3 becomes 6, 4 becomes 8, and 5 becomes 10. And this is the return value of map. You do not need to, and in fact, you shouldn't create a placeholder. Map is doing all that under the hood for you. Okay, this is just to show you like what was happening. Okay. Any questions so far? Yeah, Lawrence.
When you said shouldn't create a placeholder, is it bad form to say transform equals map dot number, do that stuff, and then use transform later?
Oh, no, that you can do. Yeah, so if you wanted to use this later in this method, or yeah, in this case, in this method, you could set transform numbers maybe, or actually, you know what, I'd call this doubles equal to this map. And then you can do whatever you want with doubles later. Like, I don't know, what might you want to do with it? I don't know. But yeah, you can do this. What I mean by you don't need to create an accumulator is you should not do this. Because here, you're sort of like mixing and meshing and misunderstanding the difference between map and each, right? So when you have an accumulator and you're doing something and shoveling things into that accumulator, you should either get rid of the accumulator or just revert back to each. Okay. Because map does all that for you, you don't want to do any extra work. We want to be strategically lazy. Other questions so far? Okay. Oh, yeah, Sid.
Can you store a method in a variable?
Yes.
Sorry, so if you wanted to put that map double where on line 34 into a variable and then call that variable later, you can use it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yep, that's no problem. All right, cool. What if I did something like this? What will map double print? Like what will be the return value now of this map double method? Take a minute, just think about it on your own for a second. What will map double return now? Okay, I'm gonna run this and I want to see like thumbs up. This is definitely what I expected. Thumbs down, like, ew, this is not right. I don't understand what's happening here. Why? Yeah. This is how I would have felt on day 4 of my programming experience. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go back to what I sort of wrote down in terrible words and what I said. Map is used to transform every element, map is used for transforming. And the way that it works is it iterates over each element that is on that original array. It runs some block of code, whatever you tell it to do. And whatever the return value of that block of code is what gets sent to the new array. So if we walk through this now, as we map over 1, we take 1 times 2, and then we execute the string hello. So what is the return value of this block? It's the last line of code run. So it's hello. And then we go to 2, and we take 2 times 2, and then string hello. That's the last line run. Oh, okay, hello. So map is like not that smart. Not that smart. It's like, I'm going to map over these things, this array, and for every element in this array, I'm going to create a new array and start sending in return values for each of these elements into that new array. So in this case, the return value of this block, it's always hello. So we just get a bunch of hellos, as many hellos as we had numbers. Let's go Mark and then Sarah.
Two questions. I guess can you describe like what's happening to the number times 2 in this scenario? And then in general, like it seems like map is doing what like your method does is it reads the last item, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah. So map is doing just exactly like what a method does. It's taking the return value of this block of code. So in this block, the return value will be the last line of code run. And it's taking whatever that is and sending it to your new array. What's happening to number times 2? So if I open just a generic pry session in here, I can like start doing some math, like 1 plus 1 is 2, 3 plus, geez, I can't type. Oh my gosh, 3 plus 4, blah, blah, blah. Like what is happening to this stuff? Like it's doing the thing, right? But if I want to try and grab this 2 again, I haven't saved it anywhere. So it's sort of like Ruby's just executing this, giving me the return value, and then moving on. It's like Ruby's just like check, 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 done, 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 done. Don't care about it. We're not saving it. I did the thing you asked me to do, and now I'm over it. If you're really curious about this process, you could look into garbage collecting, but not a rabbit hole you need to go down if you're not super curious about it. Let's go to Sarah and then Dee.
So I had the same question as Mark, but then I tried running another, I don't even know if I'd call it a method, but underneath hello, I was curious if number times 3 would return, forget about hello completely, and then return 3, 9, 12, etc. And then it just returned, if you run it, it just returned the doubles again. Like it went back to number times 2.
Let's see, map double. Oh, I'm like, why didn't that run? It's because I didn't run the file.
Wait,
so mine
yours did what I was thinking it should do, but mine, did you comment out the stuff above for this purpose in your file? You didn't? That's weird. Mine didn't do that. Mine just did, it returned.
Are you perhaps printing double, like the double with the each from above?
Yeah, I am. How did you how do you?
So so I just took out that line where I was printing doubles from the each method. And I called this method map double. So I'm printing map double.
Oh, because mine still says double. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll try running again. Now it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Dee.
So this was a accumulator question. I know you told us not to use it, but if we did push that to like another variable, does map like alter would it still alter numbers and the new one?
Great question. Map does not change or alter the original array. So I could, inside this method, if I wanted to like show that, I could print number as part of this method and print whatever the, actually, you know what? Let's do this. Doubles equals, and now we can print numbers and print doubles. And if we run map double, we'll see the original where we print numbers here, and now they're triples, but we'll see the map as well. So map does not change the original array. It creates a new array. So in this method, By the end of it, we have 2 arrays. We have the array that's created here that ends up being the return value of the method because it's the last line run, but we haven't changed this original array at all. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Joanna.
So just to kind of confirm my thinking, like I think initially when I started seeing these types of methods, I would look what's inside the pipes, the placeholder, and be like, this is very important and it has to be used for the method to work. But it seems like it's very optional. It's more of like a specific tool, like to say, I really want you to do this specific thing to each element. Is that kind of correct thinking? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so you don't have to use this element as part of your block code, but if you don't, it's probably not going to ever do what you think it's going to do. Yeah, so this will still work, but again, with that hello in there, oops, I need to now print map double. We're going to still get hello, hello, hello. We're not doing anything with number. Yeah, so the big piece here, the big sort of gotcha with map is it's creating a new array, and the things that are going into that new array are whatever the return value of the block is. So as we iterate over each of these elements, in this case number, we're iterating over. Map is saying, okay, I'm going to run whatever code is in this block, regardless of if it has to do with that number or not. And whatever the return value of that block is, I'm going to send it to that new array. Other questions so far about map? Yeah, Lawrence.
Does map or any of these numerators get grumpy if you have a strange number of things passed to it, like 0 or some an empty array or something to that effect?
Yeah, that's a good question. The answer is no. As long as you're calling map or an enumerable on an array or a collection, that collection could be empty. That's no problem. It'll just, like, since there's no elements, it just gives you a new empty array. The array could be an array of nils. Now, in this case, map isn't going to complain. Map is going to be just fine with this. But when we then try and take nil times 2, that is where it's going to have a problem. So it's going to tell us, like, we can't, yeah, undefined method times for nil class. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Any other questions about map so far? Okay, great. Let's take a palm, and when we come back at 11:30, we will talk about 2 more enumerables. So we'll be back at 11:30. And I'm going to pause my recording. Okay, great. So before the palm, we were talking about map as an enumerable that will allow us to transform elements from an array, not from the elements of an array into a new array, transformed into something different. So we had this, like, doubles example here. The other common iterative problem that we're going to talk about today is getting a subset. And we talked about this a little bit in the each lesson, but just to sort of remind us of what this could look like. When we get a subset, what we are trying to do is return, like, a smaller array than the original, like the elements that meet a specific criteria. So if I were going to model this, I might do something like, let's have a method that gives us all the numbers. And wow, I can really not type today. We can use the same numbers array that we used above. And I'm going to say odd numbers This will be each. Actually, let me start this with each, just so it'll be a little more clear. Each odd numbers. So with each, again, remembering that each returns the original array. If we wanted to get only the odd numbers out of this numbers array, we would need some sort of accumulator. So we're going to say odds equals an empty array. And then for each number, we want to shovel that number into our odds array if it's odd. So I could say like, if the number is odd, question mark, let's go ahead and shovel that number into our odds array, not numbers, just number, and end our each. And then we could return our odds. And now we can print our each odd numbers. I no longer need to print map double, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And if I run this, make this a little bit bigger, make this a little bit smaller. If I run this, I should see only, let me clear that out, only my odd numbers. So this is an example of getting a subset using each. I'm getting specific elements if that element matches a certain criteria. Sarah, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm still struggling to understand when we use plural versus singular, like number with an S or numbers without an S. Is that something that has a simple explanation, or is it something that will make more sense over time?
Maybe both. So we use numbers, the plural, when we want to refer to a collection of things. So when we're referring not just to one number, but an array of numbers, we use the plural. We use the singular when we are referring to a single element within that array, one single number.
And the program just kind of knows that?
The program doesn't know it. We have to know it. So,
and we've defined that with this number here, odds shoveler number.
So what Ruby knows is that Ruby knows that we have a numbers array. We've defined this array. At this point, Ruby knows that we're calling each on this array of numbers. And Ruby knows that whatever we put inside these pipes is going to be what we want to refer to each number as inside this block. So we use number because it's more conventional to call this block variable the singular of whatever the collection is. So if this is a collection of numbers, the block variable by convention should be number. If
that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Ruby doesn't know really what we're doing. Ruby's just like, I'm gonna follow your instructions. If I accidentally shovel numbers into my odds array, if I accidentally shovel numbers into my odds array, I'm gonna get an array of arrays. We're not going to dive too far into that, but Ruby is not smart enough to know that the thing that we want to shovel is this specific number. It's going to do just exactly and only what we tell it to do. Dane, did you have a question?
Yeah, could you just describe, I'm sorry, what the thing in the pipes is doing specifically?
Yes, so the thing in the pipes is, it's basically a placeholder variable. And the thing that it's holding the place for is going to be each of the elements in the collection that is being iterated over. So as we iterate over numbers, the first time through, the first iteration, number is 1. The second time through, number is 2. The third time, number is 3, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay,
Does that
so
help clarify? Okay.
Yeah, so what you were saying before is just that it doesn't really matter what is in those pipes, but for convention purposes, it should be the matching, like whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, we could call this muffin, right? And then we want to shovel that whatever muffin refers to into our odds. So the first time through, muffin is a variable that's holding onto the value 1. The second time through, muffin is a variable that's holding onto the value 2, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this doesn't make any sense to our human eyes. Ruby doesn't care. Ruby doesn't know what a muffin is. Ruby doesn't know what a number is. Ruby doesn't care. But to our human eyes, this looks real weird, right? So that's why we have these conventions of, if we're iterating over numbers, let's call that thing what it is. It is a number. Let's go Zach and then Sammy.
So not to go too far back into scope, but
That's okay.
the block variable of number, is that only good within that block? Like, could we access it anywhere else?
We cannot access it anywhere else. If I try and access it outside of the block, I'm going to get that undefined variable or method number, because yeah, and I like this tie back, like from inside the block we can reach out, but nothing can reach in to the block. Cool. Sammy.
Can you explain what you mean by you're shoveling number into odds?
Yeah, so I'm using, when I say I'm shoveling number into odds, what I mean is I'm adding this thing, whatever it is, to this array. And the reason I say I'm shoveling it in is because I'm using this operator that's called the shovel operator. And its purpose is to say, whatever's on the right side of me, I'm going to try and push that in to this array on the left side of me. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. And just a tiny little rabbit hole. This is actually some syntactic sugar that is a shorthand for this. So these two things are doing the exact same thing. This is like a little bit of shorthand. It's less typing. We call it syntactic sugar. Okay, but these are doing the same things. Either one of these is completely valid code. If I do both of these things, I'm going to get that number in my odds array. Will I get it twice? Oh, I don't know actually what will happen. Yeah, I'll get it twice. Noah, did you have a question?
I do. The shovel operator, it puts whatever it puts into the array at the end of the array?
At the end, yes.
Okay.
Yep. It is literally under the hood pushing. It's using this push method under the hood to push that number onto the end. There is a method that will put it onto the beginning, but you hardly ever use it, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. Sammy. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. So I remember when we were talking about pipes the first time, I think maybe I heard this incorrectly, that the block ends at the end of the pipe, right?
The block ends at the end of the end.
At the end of the end.
How's that? So the block is from do to end. Oh, not that end, sorry, this end. Do to end. So in this example, like when we're finding a subset, we have a lot of ends going on because we need to shovel in that number if it's odd, and if has an end. When we use if, we always need to end it.
Mm-hmm.
And then each has a block from do to this end.
Okay, got it. I think I must have interpreted end. And so then when we were talking about how you can't call number outside of the block, I was like, well, wait, if that's the end of the block, we just called it in the next line. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. This is the block. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Let's go Emmy and then Richard.
So I was wondering about the dot odd question mark.
Mhm.
Like I know it's making every number in the numbers array odd, but is that like a preset like method that
Yeah.
like dot odd will make it everything odd?
So dot odd is a built-in Ruby method that you can call on any number, like in any integer, and it's not making that number odd, it's asking the number, hey, are you odd? And it's returning either true or false. So if I open up a pry session and say like 13, are you odd? This will give me either true or false. If it is an odd number, it will give me true. If it's not an odd number, it will give me false. 12, are you odd? False. And so what this is saying is like, if whatever this returns, if it's true, I do want that number. So I could also write this like more explicitly to say if odd question mark equal true, then shovel that number into our odds array.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Richard.
So this is not really a question, but something really cool I just found out. That shovel is actually the name of a method. So if you did odds dot and then the carets and then in parentheses with number, it actually works. Like I didn't know that that was an alias.
Yes, and you can also create methods. Like you could override that and create a shovel method in a class. Yep.
So it's just like
Neato.
you can use symbols in your method name them.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
Some symbols. I think there are some that will not, that it won't work, but some of them, yes. Okay, cool. So this is an example of how to get a subset with each. This problem of getting a subset is so common that there is an enumerable. There's an enumerable for that. So the enumerable to get a subset of numbers, so to take an array and get a smaller array based on a certain criteria, is find all. So the enumerable is find all. We want to find all the elements that match a certain criteria. And the way that this works, I guess I don't need that in here. The way that find all works, if I were going to recreate this method, I'm just going to copy it. Just like map, find all does not need an accumulator, so I can get rid of that. Instead of each, I want to find all. And because find all is specifically going to give you elements that match a certain criteria, the only thing you put in the block is the criteria that you are trying to match. So the only thing you put in the block is the criteria you are trying to match. So this is the appropriate use of find all. Oops. What was find all? Odd numbers. This is the appropriate use of find all that does exactly what our each above is doing. So let's dig into this a little bit. Oh, Richard, did you have a question? Oh, okay, no worries. So let's dig into this a little bit. So find all is specifically used to get a smaller array than the original. It's going to create a new array. And the things that will be in that array, the elements in that new array, will be only those for which the block returns a truthy value. Sorry, heavy sigh because computers are never as smart as you want them to be. Okay, so find all creates a new array, and it creates that new array using the elements from the original, and it will send elements to that new array when the block is truthy. We're going to dig into this a little bit, but I see Natia and Lawrence. Did y'all have questions? Let's go Natia and then Lawrence.
So is this an all enumerals? It's just arrays. It's not hashes. It's not anything else. It's just.
You can use any enumerable on any collection type. We are just focusing on arrays right now. Yeah. Lawrence and then Gunnar.
Because I ran into this problem and was doing it with select and then looked at enumerals, and there's find all, select, and filter. Are those all aliases, or do they do something slightly different?
They're aliases. Yeah, so find all and select are two that you'll see very often. Filter you won't see quite as much, but find all and select are two aliases. They do the same thing, and you'll see both used interchangeably. Yeah, so find all or select. Gunnar.
Okay, so kind of going back to the number.odd question mark equal equal true. So that's like repetitive, right? Almost, so like, because
a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so if we wanted to say find number.odd, but we want it to equal false, we could do that, right? Even though we would just use even question mark.
Yeah, so if you wanted to find the evens, you could say like the numbers that are odd is equal to false, or you could use number dot even question mark.
Okay.
Or number dot even equal true. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But we're going to focus on the odds. Joe.
Yeah, so along what Gunnar was just saying, so if we're using like a Boolean method to do that, is it always going to return the things that equal true?
Yes. Yes. We're going to dive into some gotchas on this find all, just like map has that weird gotcha where like you might accidentally put a bunch of hellos into your array. Find all also has some gotchas.
Okay.
So let's really dig into what's happening here. So as we use find all to iterate over this collection of numbers, find all, just like map, creates a new array. The way that it populates that new array is slightly different, not slightly, it's very different actually from how map does it. So find all looks at each element. It's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna hold this element in my hand. So first I'm gonna look at this one, and I'm gonna run my block. And if this block returns a truthy value, I'm gonna assume that you want this element in the new array. So first number is 1. Number, are you odd? Yes, that is true. So I'm going to put 1 into the array. Then I'm going to look at 2. 2, are you odd? That's false. So this will return false. So I'm not going to do anything with you. I'm just like, meh, whatever. Next. 3, are you odd? Yes. Okay, great. I'm assuming that you need to go into this new array. Perfect. 4, are you odd? No. Okay, next. 5, are you odd? Yes. Great. Now we're done. What will happen if I do this? What will the return value be if I end my block by saying true? Think about it for a little bit. Think about it for a second. What will this new array be? Okay, I'm gonna run it. Let's print find all odd numbers. Let's get out of this pry. And I get all of my numbers. Okay. Ruby is not as smart as you want it to be. Ruby's not as smart as you want it to be. So find all creates a new array, and the elements in that new array will be only those for which the block returns a truthy value. So for each number, as we iterate over, find all is saying, okay, first I'm going to grab this 1. Okay, 1, are you odd? Okay, yes, that's true. And then true. So the return value of this block is true. So I'm going to assume you want this number 1 in the new array. So as we create this array, it's like, yep, great, number 1. Now number 2. Number 2, are you odd? No, that's false. But then we have true here. So the return value of this block is true. So I'm going to assume that you want this number that I'm looking at. Great, 2. And on and on and on. So find all sends the element that you're looking at, or that it's iterating over, to a new array if the block returns a truthy value. Okay. Can I get a fist to 5, like with your actual fingers? When I say a truthy value, 5, I know 100% what you're talking about. 0, I have never heard this term before. Okay, cool. Can I hear from someone who put up a 5? What are the falsy values?
False and nil.
False and nil. Perfect. Yes. False and nil are the only falsy values in Ruby. False and nil. Everything else in the world is truthy. 0 is truthy. An empty string is truthy. An empty array is truthy. The string false is truthy. Okay, so as long as this method is returning a truthy value, or as long as this block is returning a truthy value, we're going to get all the things. Okay, find all says you want this element if this block is truthy. So if it's anything other than false or nil, you want this element. Even the string false is truthy. Okay. If we end this with like nil, then we'll get no elements, nothing. Nil is never going to be truthy. Okay. So the appropriate use of find all is to put only the comparison that you want to run, only the criteria that you want to run inside the block. Okay. A key piece here, map will always give you an array of the same length as the original. Find all will give you a subset of that array. That subset might end up being the same length. Maybe all the elements meet that criteria, but it could be smaller. So find all has the ability to give you a smaller array based on that criteria. Map will always, 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 always give you an array of the same length. So if you have a problem where the array that you want might be smaller than the array you start with, find all as your friend, and map will make you pull your hair out. Okay. All right, cool. There is one other method. Actually, before I move on, any questions about find all so far? Okay, there's one other method that I want to cover, and I think we can do it in 5 minutes. It's very similar to find all, and that is it's called find. And find will find the first of a subset based on a specific criteria. So if we want to find the first odd number, we could use find, and it looks like this. Numbers, instead of find, we're going to use find. And I want to find the first odd number. And I want to get, let's see, hold up a number 1 if you think if you think this method is going to return the number 1. hold up like this if you think the method is going to return an array with the number 1 in it. So you think it's going to be the number 1. You think it's going to be an array with the number 1 in it. Cool. I like it. We've got a good mix. Let's see. So find returns the element, the first element it comes to that matches the criteria. So different than the other 2 enumerables that we talked about today, map and find all will return an array. Find will return the element, the first element that matches the criteria that you give it in the block. All the same gotchas, however. So if I change my number array to 2, and then I do something silly like, hello, what will be the integer that is found? Will it be 2 or will it be 3? 2 or 3? 2 or 3? 2 or 3? I need to go to the eye doctor. It will be 2. Yeah, I saw Sarah. What? I know, isn't that frustrating? So just in the same way that find all will send elements whenever the block is truthy, find will return the element, the first element for which the block is truthy. So since I have this silly little hello down here, the return value of this block is always going to be the string hello, and that's truthy. So it's going to be this, whatever that first thing is. 2, is hello truthy when I'm looking at a 2? Yes, that is the thing that I want. Noah.
Is it possible to give find a kind of parameter to have it find more than one element of an array?
Nope. Ooh, I don't think so. I'm gonna say I'm 95% sure no. If you want to find more than one element, find all is what you're looking for. Yeah, find will return a single element. I'm talking myself into it more and more. I'm gonna say 99% sure no. If you need more than one element, you need to use find all. Sarah.
I want to say I understand what you just said, but I'm still really confused why 3 didn't show up, because that's the first odd number in that array.
Yeah.
So does hello just negate that you're searching for the number and then it just searches for the first element in the array instead?
So find is going to return the first element for which the block is truthy.
But 2 is not an
2
odd
is not the
number.
block. So the block that find is looking at is everything from the do to the end. So find and find all sort of work in the same way. They're iterating over elements, and in the case of find, it's going to stop iterating and return the element that it's looking at as soon as the block returns truthy. So for this first, in this case, we're looking at 2. We say, is that number odd? Nope, that's false. And then we say string hello, and hello is not false or nil, so it is truthy. So find is like, oh, you must want this first number. You must, this thing, when I was looking at 2, I ran this block and the return value is a string, which is truthy. So I'm going to give you this element that I'm looking at right now.
Which is the first one. And why wouldn't it have returned hello? Just playing on what we've been talking about before, because yeah. I thought hello would take that away.
Yeah, and this is the big difference between map and find all, or map and find all really. Map is creating a new array, and the things that it sends to that new array is whatever the return value of the block is. So whatever the return value of the block is, map sends that to a new array, moves on to the next thing, runs the block, whatever that return value is, sends it to a new array. Find all and find iterate over elements, and as it iterates, it's like holding on to that array, or sorry, it's holding on to that element, in this case number, let me go back up to find all. I think this is a little bit easier to walk through. So it is, when we call find all, it's saying, okay, I'm going to iterate over my numbers. For this first number, I'm going to hold on to this. If when I run this block, it gives me a truthy value, I'm going to send this element to the new array. So find all gives us a subset of the original elements. So it's saying like, you want some of these. So I'm going to send them to the new array if this block returns a truthy value. So in this case, with this hello, it's going to send everything to the new array, because this hello, like, even though we ran this, the return value of the block is the last line run, and hello is a truthy value. Even if we had like 0 here or true, geez, I can't type. It's going to send all those elements. You want to find a subset of those elements. Versus map, you want to transform those elements. You want to change them. You want new elements. And so it's sending whatever the return value of the block, whatever the return value of the block is, to that new array. So with map, when the return value is hello, that's why we got a bunch of hellos.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark.
Really quick, just to confirm, you can have like hello and then like have world at the bottom, and you can have different formulas, and then you can have like something else at the bottom. It's just reading the last one. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you can build this out as much as you want, whatever. It's just like, it's doing all the things, whatever the end result is, whatever that last line evaluates to, that's what matters. So you could do something like this, like, hello, world. How about 13 times a lot of big number, blah, 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 blah. And can we still find the first odd number? Yes, it's 3, because I got rid of that 1. So here now the return value is the comparison that matters. Now, we're talking a lot about this. The reality is I'm showing you this because it's a gotcha. It's like, if you accidentally use this method in the wrong way, you could easily find yourself in this gotcha world. Ideally, you just never have to deal with that, because ideally you just use the method in the way that it is intended, which is to say find and find all. The intention is that you put some, what is the word that I'm looking for here? Some condition, that's the word. The intention of find and find all is that you put some condition statement here, something that will evaluate to true or false to prove the criteria that you are looking for. Dane, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. So just to confirm kind of like a formal definition for the find method, it will return the first element that is truthy, but that also meets the specified criteria, or only one, or the other?
So find returns the first element, not a comma, for which the block returns a truthy value. Truthy value. So let's say I don't even put my comparison in here. I just put like hello, right? I'm not ever running any comparison, but the return value of this block is going to be a truthy value. And so it's going to find, as it iterates over this, it's going to give me the first element for which this block returns a truthy value, which hello is always truthy. So it's always going to be the first element, no matter what the element is. So even if the element were nil, it's going to give us that nil. So the intention is that you use a condition statement to say whether or not you want that specific element. Okay. I know it's 12:06. If you need to go, please take off. Actually, you know what? I think let's go ahead and end here. I've covered, I think, everything that I absolutely wanted to. Let me just run through the lesson real quick. Yeah, cool. At the end of the lesson itself, if you look at the enumerables 1 lesson, there are some additional enumerables that you might want to start looking into. This is also a great time to start working on the enumerables, the enumerables Ruby exercises. I think that would be a useful thing to spend some time on. Otherwise, we will have one more enumerables lesson where we will learn a few more. But I think with that, I will let you go. Unless there are any other last questions. It's been a long morning of class. I saw Matt. Did you have a question? Okay. All right, cool. I'm going to stop recording.